Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Valen, and this is L. Ender's Cataclysm. Today I'm going to be taking you through just about everything that I can think of in order to try and help you accomplish conquering this mod. But first things first, let's talk about some preparation. If you have not experienced this mod before, it's an extremely challenging boss fighting mod that adds in some different world gen and lots of bosses. So each one will have different kinds of drops and challenges with trying to defeat them, and I'm going to try and help you through with that, because without having some overpowered mods also installed, you might be in for a really tough battle. So to start with, your food. Yes, I know, it's very basic. If you can find enchanted golden apples, great. But otherwise, golden apples during any of these boss fights is pretty much going to be required for the most part. So you're going to want to stock up on gold. But before that, I would recommend that you pick a place to have a base. And Lush Caves is actually a really, really good place, because you're going to want to, on occasion, fight a boss that may randomly spawn there. That being said, I would recommend that fighting any of the bosses, mini or otherwise, in this mod, you probably should start with Diamond plus at least Protection 1 on there. Then later on, if you really are struggling, you can always go with something like Protection 4 on any of your armor. And if you're getting hit with some really big, beefy hits from some of these bosses, which will happen, Netherite armor is going to be required. But you'll also end up getting some of the new armor types and or weapons that you might get from some of the boss drops or some of the loot that they might give you. Keeping all that in mind, there are several immunities that several bosses will have, but some of them might also have some weaknesses. We're going to explore that. Now, I'm going to take you through each of these individually, but it doesn't mean that you have to fight each of these bosses in the order that I give you. Fighting several mini-bosses before then coming back to fight the appropriate boss will sometimes make things a little bit simpler for you. So let's start off with some easy-to-get armor that is actually not as easy as it seems. In your travels, I'm assuming that you've done a bunch of that already. I'm going to have some diamond armor with just some simple Protection 1. You get a little bit of armor toughness to help from large hits from injuring you too badly. But I am going to say also it wouldn't hurt to have yourself some kind of weapon. In this case, I've just got a sharpness diamond sword. You can also get away with an axe just fine. Shields are going to be paramount in a lot of the boss fights. So putting Unbreaking 3 on them is really going to save you a lot of shields, or you just need to carry some backups, because some of them will just cleave right through the durability on these things. And of course, don't overlook the possibility of just poisoning a boss and running around and waiting for it to run off. This will apply in several situations, but not all of them. Our first boss is more of a mini boss. This one I don't think would rank very high on the difficulty scale, but it is kind of a warm-up. Very rarely in Lush Caves you may find a crab boss, known as the Amethyst Crab. By spawning one in, you can see here, it's pretty darn cool. It will burrow up from the ground when it does spawn. You might need some kind of minimap mod to help you try and find these things. They also may have a little difficulty with some of the drip leaves on occasion. But going into survival mode, they aren't really going to just straight up attack you. They are relatively neutral until actually attacked. But then once they do, they have a possibility of attacking you with some kind of, well, I'll just call it a dig-splosion, and then it also has a punch attack. But if you see it coming, just hold your shield up, and you'll notice that it sometimes will break your shield, just like an axe will. But if you see it dig down, also be aware it might do that dig-splosion effect. Just basically moving in to attack it, and then also removing yourself from any kind of danger. As you notice here, it's having a little bit of problems with this big drip leaf in the way, giving me the advantage to just kind of smash it down. Now the other option is to, of course, just shoot it with a bow. It's not a very difficult thing. This is just kind of warming you up and giving you access to different stuff. Attacking it while it's down below won't do anything, as you just heard. It will just kind of bounce off. But again, you're going to want to be careful about some of these punches and the attacks, because they can hurt you quite a bit. Now it does have 100 hit points and 10 armor points. But that's not to be worried about because the drops are what you're more interested in. This little mini boss can spawn again in lush caves biomes. And these drops that it will drop are something that can be extremely valuable. The Amethyst Crab meat, while it looks tasty and something that you really want to try and start eating, you don't want to. Later on, you're going to be using it in an altar of amethyst if you're fighting the Leviathan. And the effects that blessed Amethyst Crab meat can give you during that boss fight is really, really going to help you survive a lot. So you're going to want to just kind of store those for future you, because future you is going to thank you a lot. Other than that, you get amethyst crab shells. Enough of these and you'll get yourself some bloomstone pauldrons. These can really help you out with a little bit of some fun and finesse, as well as armor protection. Putting on some bloomstone pauldrons, you can then gain the ability to start digging while you're, well, sneaking. To give you an example, I have some on now, and if I hold sneak, I then kind of burrow into the ground, giving myself a little bit of protection from some kind of ranged attacks. But when I pop back up by letting go of sneak, I then do my own little special attack. Now, it does have the same armor and toughness that Diamond Chestplate does, but it does also give you a little bit of knockback resistance and that really cool special effect for kind of digging down, which you can actually use to get through some narrow gaps if needed. But otherwise, it's just kind of handy, and it wouldn't hurt to kind of base in a lush cave area because the rarity of these crabs spawning is really difficult to try and find them to begin with. The next boss on my list is the Netherite Monstrosity. Now this is actually going to be a bit of a challenge. This can be found at the Soul Blacksmith in the Nether. So you're going to have to go prepared. You'll have to have been in the Nether before. You can't just go straight in because you will need Netherite scrap in order to find where it is using an Eye of Monstrous. That requires a little bit of lava buckets, some blackstone, Eye of Ender, and those Netherite scrap. Not to worry, any of the eyes used to find bosses in this mod, when used, will actually be safe from lava, whether it gets hit by it, falls into it, whatever, so it will kind of be fireproof and so on. You only do tend to get like maybe one of these, so if you make more than one, it's not going to hurt, but you probably don't need more than one unless it really falls into a really difficult spot to get to. So once you find the Soul Blacksmith, where this Netherite Monstrosity resides, as you can see down here at the end. It's not attacking me because I'm in creative, but it's highly recommended that you use a respawn anchor. This is just a vanilla item that you can easily make in the Nether and just refill it with a little bit of glowstone. Once you've done so, be sure to right click on it and you can set your respawn to this point, using one of those glowstone each time that you die. You don't want to be too close, but it would be beneficial because sometimes finding some of these bosses in these arenas can be hundreds, if not thousands upon thousands of blocks away. With that in mind, requirements for this boss fight. At least diamond with protection 1 armor or better. The higher it is, the easier the fight's going to be. On top of that, you're going to want a shield, preferably with some kind of unbreaking or multiple shields at your fingertips. Some kind of weapon with a higher sharpness rating on it is preferred. An axe and a sword both work just fine, as tactics of jumping in, hitting, and running away do tend to work really well with an axe, and a sword will just allow you to get as many hits in as possible during those opportunities. Now in this case, ranged weaponry like a crossbow or a bow will not work, but you might be able to get away with a trident with some loyalty on it, though those are very difficult to come by, as one might expect. As usual, you're going to want golden apples and a potion of fire resistance at the least. You can use poison on this guy and let that do some of the work for you. On top of that, a stack of netherrack is actually going to help you out with eliminating some of the lava that this boss will spew. Now it has 250 hit points and 10 armor points. This entire arena is not entirely for looks. There is some loot to be had in here, but you might not be able to find it until after the battle because this boss is going to be picking on you. Typically, once you've started battle, you'll get some epic music playing. I've muted it in this case so that it wouldn't overcomplicate any of my tutorializing. As you can see, he will throw out a lot of lava and eventually suck it back up, restoring some health. This is where just having a bit of fire resistance as well as some netherrack on hand to eliminate these sections will make it a lot easier, because every time he absorbs any of that lava, it restores his health. So, and it also makes it easier for you to just kind of get around a little easier. You're probably just going to want to punch him, hold your shield up, wait for the axe break, or wait for that attack. You can always hide behind some of these structures, but he will probably start busting through at some point with any of his large attacks for it. So you can usually get one hit in and then you'll have to retreat because your shield will get broken. But then you just come back in and repeat. Once he starts spewing out the lava, just try avoiding it, and oof, that's where having Featherfall on your armor is really going to be important, besides the protection aspects, of course. Be sure to keep up with your apples as you need to, but that's pretty much it for this battle. If you really want to, like I said, you might be able to get away with some kind of trident attack for some kind of ranged damage, but it's not too difficult otherwise. Just be sure that you keep your fire resistance up, and you always make sure that you have your apples ready to be eaten at any given time. If you're able to stay close enough to him, most of the lava spewing just doesn't really happen, but you can also just kind of tank some of the damage that he does. It's not too difficult, and getting jump hits on them can really make your battle go a lot easier with the damage that you're doing increasing a lot more. And then in the end, you'll end up getting rewarded. In this case, with a brand new pick. Well, in the shape of a hammer. Also, a monstrous horn. But we'll cover that in just a moment. One thing you should be aware of is that you now have a new weapon, the Infernal Forge. It does quite a bit of damage, it's got a slow attack speed, but it also is usable as a pick. You can enchant it as such. You can even enchant it and use it as a weapon if you so desire, because it has a ground pound effect that when you press the right click with your mouse, will create this effect. But it's not where you hit with the hammer, it's where you're standing. So be aware that the closer the mobs are, the more likely they are to be damaged by you when doing that. Not trying to just click near them, because they just need to be close to you. So if you're starting to get swarmed, doing a ground pound will definitely help. But that being said, you now can start harvesting some of the loot nearby. There's a whole bunch of the ancient debris and scrap in some of the local areas around this, so don't be afraid to look around the different structure parts. And if you're able to just kind of like clear the path of the blue flame back into this area, don't overlook that there's a secret button unlocking certain secret rooms that you might have overlooked before. So once you've finished that boss off, you should have plenty of netherite scrap that you can use to upgrade your current armor set, which might be badly damaged from that last battle or other battles that you may have had. But keep in mind that you might not need to upgrade your helmet because there is a monstrous horn. If you look around for a bastion and get yourself a smithing template, you could then take a netherite helmet, okay, yeah, maybe you do need to upgrade it, and the monstrous horn, and make yourself a monstrous helm. Yes, it has the same stats as the other helmet, but it has an extra benefit. While worn, if you fall below half your health, you'll knock back nearby enemies that can be knocked back, and it will increase your own defense and knockback resistance and health regeneration. So with this new hat, you can put it on and make yourself a little bit more difficult to kill. The biggest benefit of this, in my mind, is that it has infinite durability. So you don't need to worry about things getting destroyed by bosses that are constantly hammering you with their weapons, like this guy, like this with this hat on instead. In this case, I would recommend, if you have the choice of choosing the Bloomstone Pauldrons or the Netherite Chestplate, that you go with the Netherite Chestplate. Yes, it's really cool to have the ability to shoot little projectiles when you sneak or maybe get through some other areas. But if you're fighting another boss, then you're probably going to want to switch to the Netherite Chestplate, if only because it's got higher armor toughness, and that's going to help reduce some of the damage that you're going to be taking. And you're going to need that. Just from that last battle with an Unbreaking 3 shield, you notice half of my health of that shield is gone. Another benefit of the Infernal Forge pick and or weapon is that when used, it actually doesn't have any durability loss either, so it's an infinite pick. I recommend that you enchant it as much as possible. It's really good for in and out guerrilla-like tactics where you need to go in, attack a boss, and retreat and recover just once. Then you're doing as much damage as possible with this new infinite use durability pick/weapon. And you might even be able to do a quick hit and ground pound just immediately after and do kind of like a little bit of double damage. So just to give you a bit of an example of how this ground pound works, let's stand in the middle here and use it. Problem is, you actually have to aim at the ground itself, but in a very large area, it'll do the damage of this pick. So it can be very devastating when used properly. Otherwise, you can just use it to whack one enemy at a time with a really slow recharge for either effect. Another nice thing is that if you don't want to use the ground pound, you don't have to. You can just not aim at the ground and you can still use your shield, even though it is such a large weapon to wield. So that about sums up everything you need for this boss. So let's move on to another one. That's right, there's more parts to this series, so don't stop here. Feel free to click on here once the video is out on the channel. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more videos, please be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe. Don't be afraid to stop by on Twitch, where we stream regularly. And until next time, I'll see ya.